Hi, it's Mindrolling, and I'm here with Trevor Oswalt. This is a new friend I'm meeting. We have a lot of people in common, and Trevor goes by has a group. Is that what it would be? East Forest.
Yeah, it's sort of turned, I suppose, more into a moniker that's an umbrella for experiences and music and all sorts of things. But yeah,
Yeah.
East Forest is actually a translation of my last name from German,
Oh, wow.
Oswald. Yeah,
Oh,
Oswald.
uh
Yeah,
huh. Oh, cool.
yeah,
So glad to have you here, Trevor.
yeah, me too.
So, now, Trevor is a musician and does some really, really fabulous electronic music, and as it's called in the old PR pack, shamanic electro pop, which is cool. But he has a deep undercurrent in all of the music that I've been listening to that's very, very connected with the places inside ourselves that are more of the true places, shall we say. And so I'm really happy to have you here, and I'm happy to introduce to our audience some of the music and just talk about how you approach it and so on. But I think I always like to do like right at the get go, so, especially if you're talking about music, we need to play something for people,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to play a track, at least most of the track, from a new release called Cairn, Carn. You'll be able to, everybody, you'll be able to get linked up on the Mind Rolling page, on the show notes page. But
Cairn. I think it's a
Cai, what did I say?
Carn. I think
Kern.
it sounds like
It's
the
probably
name
saying
Cairn, but it's like Cairn, like a stack of stones. Yeah,
uh-huh.
like you might see on a trail.
Cairn. I'm sorry. But this is a new record. It just came out literally probably a month or so ago. And this is a track that I love from the record called Tiny Choices. There you go. Tiny Choices from Cairn from East Forest. So, Trev, let's just start a little bit uh, about just how you came into all of this with this wonderful combination of a devotion to conscious living and a devotion to really opening yourself up from inside out, as you mentioned.
Hmm.
That I've seen you talk, you do not just music, but you're also expressing yourself in other ways to connect with people around the spirit. But what do you think? What were your trigger points? I always ask this to everybody I meet on mind rolling. What were those trigger points that led you to understand there was a path? Just the
Sure.
basic concept.
Well, first, thanks for having me. And I just wanted to say that record, Karen, that whole record was a collaboration with a friend and electronic producer named Keith Sweaty. So that is a collaborative record, and that was really fun
Hmm.
to work with him. But yeah, it started for me when I was in New York City. I was there for 10 years in my 20s, kind of doing the typical chasing the fame game, the money game, as a lot of us do. And I grew up in Oregon. I think I went out there to go as far as I could to find something different. And I was an actor, I was a photographer, musician, and I got pretty disillusioned after almost 10 years of diving into the acting world and Hollywood and all that stuff. And simultaneously, I was starting to discover a lot of new spiritual practices and indigenous ceremonies. And I was also getting really turned on by wilderness and nature. And I remember I'd drive 6 hours to get up to the Adirondacks
Hmm.
just to get somewhere where there was wild land. And it was really starting to turn me on. And at the time, what I was connecting through there was a certain feeling, of course, but I wanted to find a way to sort of bring it back. And pictures didn't do it for me, but sound did. And I'd make field recordings, and I'd make field recordings of those ethereal moments where, like, we all have them, where you hear like wind through leaves or a certain cricket, and it just opens up that sense of timelessness in you for a few moments. And I would make these recordings in these wilderness places that are still wild. And at the same time as these things often happen in our lives, coincidentally, a lot of things were falling apart, and projects and music. And so I started making music for myself to meditate to, music to use as a tool to journey with. And as I was doing this, I had no commercial agenda with it. It was really just for myself. I started putting these field recordings into it.
Mm.
And it was such a revelation, because it was like bringing in the soul of a whole nother place. It instantly had power and meaning to me. And it felt like a collaboration with nature. And I also put in recordings of people talking, or my life, and that dichotomy of city and nature.
Mm.
So it really went from there, and it became a tool, something I was using to all my music. I try to have it sort of help engender an inner space and pushing you into that introspection. And I'm really chasing a feeling. And I think that feeling is that feeling of infiniteness that we feel, that soul feeling, that soul space. And that's really what I need for myself in my life. And that's why I started doing this. And it's wonderful that, I can kind of create medicine for myself through the music in a practice, and that can be something that I can do on a day-to-day basis and share it with others. It's a blessing.
Yeah, I would say it's a good work if you can get it there.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what I say about myself all the time. Good work. I got it. Happy in that way. 'Cause, giving to people what seems to be one big raison d'être why we're here. So now, what about plant medicine, and what about psychedelics in your journey? Was that part of it?
It was a big part. Yeah.
Because I meet a lot of. I mean, you're in your
Yeah.
30s or something at this point.
I just turned 40. Yeah.
40. Oh, you're
Yeah.
old utter cucker already. Forget about
Yeah.
it.
There you go.
But no, I do meet lots of people, and the combination of coming into, getting an idea of the path, consciousness, and
Right.
wanting to come out of the identity with mind ego stuff. And, it's just like back in the day for us, it that was a big opener. I mean, and I tell over and over
Yes.
on the podcast, when I met Neem Karoli Baba, it was if I look back on it, I go, okay, that was good that I had an idea of what it was like to be out of the senses and the mind, and know
Hmm.
that wasn't reality. And
Yeah.
that helped a lot. So but it's not necessary. We're not saying that, everybody, but it's
No, and
certainly.
it's not a panacea.
Yeah, right.
And it's not, but in my own path, I think what was so powerful about it was it being a felt experience. And before that, I grew up in a world that was very rational and intellectual with my father. My father was an atheist,
uh,
and I really needed something to really show me by my own experience. There's nothing I could argue with, right? And I had, as a lot of people do, I had an experience with psilocybin when I was in college that was almost accidental. And thank God it was positive. But a lot of people have traumatic experiences by being in the wrong set or setting. And I had this positive experience, but I had no elders. I had no understanding of what happened. I had no sense of what it meant to even be in that space above time. And I was chasing that for a long time. And I think when I started making the East Forest music, I was trying to use the music to figure out how I could get those sort of states of mind, however you get there, meditation or hiking in the forest or psychedelic, but more regularly. So I wanted it to kind of create a sonic architecture that would, as I started studying sound healing, like what are we doing in a modern sense to train the brain, and what are tools I can use? And then by going through indigenous ceremonies like ayahuasca or even Lakota sweat lodges where they're singing, they all use music,
yeah.
all of them. And so I was like, well, what's the common theme here? What are the techniques that have been used for thousands of years? And then you mash it up in your own creativity. And that was kind of the backbone of it.
Mm.
Yeah, it's funny that two of those records that I think I shared with you, Music to Die To and Music to Be Born
Yeah.
To, which came out back in, I think, 2012 or something. Those are ceremony. They're like from ceremonies. I mean, they're seeped in the energy of psilocybin and that sort of energy, because that's sort of what my music birthed out of. And then recent things like Cairn, the collaboration, I'm bringing in another artist, Keith Sweaty. So it's a little more upbeat and electronic, but I think the backbone is still there, that foundation of introspection and heart space.
Mm. It's funny, you talk about psilocybin and the mushroom. We just had a retreat with Ram Dass and others, Jack Cornfield, Christian Dass, out in Maui in the end of last year.
Yeah.
And the topic was around trust in the heart. And in fact, we have a wonderful course, everybody. I want to remind you, coming up, make sure you're on ramdass.org mailing list. This is a little ad here in the middle of all this
Add
stuff.
away.
You'll get, it's a free course, and it's around trust in the heart in very uncertain times. So it's Jack Cornfield, Trudy Goodman, Ram Dass, Krishna Das, me, Duncan Trussell weighs in.
And, I love Duncan.
Yeah. Anyhow, you'll get an email and you can join that. So, but in that, I asked Duncan, I said, Duncan, so, because my whole thing has always been, when I met Ram Dass, I totally trusted him. Totally. And I just looked in his eyes, and he gave full attention. Nobody ever gave me that kind of full on, like there's nobody in the universe except me.
Yeah, it's a real gift.
Yeah. And so from there, I met Neem Karoli Baba. So that trust turned into a broader, shall we say, more faith, less mind and more completely intuitive. And so Duncan says, well, you. I said, me? Yeah, I trust you. That's why I'm here, right? He went on this whole funny thing. Then I turned to Ram Dass. I said, what about you? What was the first real trust that you had? He goes, mushrooms.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you don't trust that experience, that can be a challenge too.
Well, for him, it presented, just like for you, it presented reality. That's a big catchword for a lot of different subtle things that happen. And you talked about it being experiential, not no head trip whatsoever. And for him, he had that experience in whatever way it manifested for him, but he trusted that the mushroom gave him that was just the universe speaking to him, and from there, his whole life, of course, changed radically. So,
yeah, some of us, it takes a pretty stiff hit to break out of our hypnotized lives, and that's definitely the case for me. I needed something strong in order to really show me I couldn't argue with the truth. It just was, and the arguing was just suffering, and then the acceptance was an explosion of my heart. It's like, wow, this is what nirvana is. It's just like this moment to moment thing of in and out, and it's just always there. It is a huge revelation for me, huge. And listening to Ram Dass and his talks and other elders, Terrence McKenna, these things, it's really powerful for me to have people put it into words and to describe the things that you feel.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's something I find also with next generation people, that there's the way in which they connect with people who've been there before in a very open way is really an optimistic thing, considering the world we live in right now.
Yeah, and those retreats like you're doing, I think that's a great opportunity to do it, because at the end of the day, when you meet others who have sort of shared those experiences in their lives, there's nothing to say, right? It's just something you just look into each other's eyes, and there's an understanding of shared experience, and it really has to be in person like that. I have a couple retreats that I do too, and it's for the same person, just gathering. I've been to where you guys do that retreat, I think.
Oh, really?
My parents took us out there, and I was like, I know this spot.
That's funny.
This is where they do the retreats.
That's
dying to go.
Oh, well, you should come.
I'll make it a
Yeah,
priority. I'm
yeah,
dying to go. Yeah.
definitely. Yeah. But I have to say, aside from the presence thing, and this is something to talk about, there's a way in which we do get caught in so many rather subtle ways with our minds and our emotions that it does take. It's very advantageous to have somebody who's been there before, who's not struggling quite the same way. It's advantageous to hear their quote unquote story of how they are not at the mercy of many of the things that many of us are at on a day to day basis. For instance, just judging, the way that judging goes on with all of us. I mean, you're judging everything. You know, you look at a person on the street. Even it doesn't mean that it's mean spirited, but you're meeting businessman, attractive person, on and on and on. Right?
Mm-hmm.
There's that constant self-talk going on. And as a result, many people that, especially just newly on the path or are on the path in general, they start having negative reference to themselves in terms of I am a bad person because all I'm doing all day long is just projecting and judging and so on. And someone like Jack Kornfield, I think of him because I love the way he responds to just this kind of self-talk, and he's more about it's okay. We're just human. We're human.
Right.
That's what we do. And he goes
Yeah.
on from there. Yeah, how do you experience this in your own life? And obviously if you're doing retreats, then you're dealing with people who have this going on all the time as well.
Yeah. I mean, for myself, it's we were talking about dogs before we started,
Yeah.
and what I love about having a dog is it reminds me of my own animal needs. Like I notice in my dog as a reflection of myself when she doesn't get enough exercise or doesn't feel secure, things start to fall apart a bit. And it's a great reminder, and it grounds me to have to take care of her needs, to remind myself that yeah, I'm an animal too, just like her, and I need to take care of my needs. And my brain is just connected to this whole system. We have these levels of consciousness that start with just physical form up to like our ability to understand cosmic things and brotherly love. So for me, it's something that I take it my mind at sometimes that mindfulness helps me have a grain of salt to
Mm.
remember that sometimes when things run away, or sometimes when I'm feeling kind of dark in my thoughts, and I can notice that, I can attribute it sometimes to just simply being tired, um, to cut myself some stress if there's external factors that are at play, some kind of stress, if there's adrenaline in my system. So it's less for me about turning it off and more about stepping just next to it and sort of loving those thoughts like I would a wounded child or something, because
Mm.
that's sometimes what I feel like inside. But there's always that soul space, that awareness that's sort of holding it all. And there's that song, Grandmother's Sphere, we were talking about, and there's a line in it that says, I didn't transcend my ego. We became partners. We became teammates. And it was just a revelation I had in a ayahuasca ceremony about I wasn't trying to push my ego away. It was more like it has an important job for me to do. It was more that I'm just becoming a teammate with it in a sense. And what that meant for me was some compassion for my own mind, some compassion
Mm.
for who I identify have as moment to moment, because that is the most intimate relationship we have in life, is the one with our mind. More than any lover, more than any partner, more than any dog, it's always there with us. And it goes through some trials and tribulations, to be sure. And I kind of gave up though, that idea of trying to get rid of it. It's just more of a noticing and an accepting and an allowing something to move through versus trying to push it away. And boy, is it tough sometimes. But
Mm. Mm. You know what they say? Ego can be a terrible master, but a wonderful servant. That's Ramdas maybe said it. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a great line,
Yeah, and it's so
and it has a lot of truth.
yeah, yeah. But what you're saying is exactly right in my mind. You got to cozy up to that stuff. You cannot push it away. We just hate to keep talking about ourselves so much in terms of everything we're doing here, but I can't help
Doing
it.
a lot.
We just did a course around transforming difficult emotions, and there was a lot of great advice around exactly in a similar fashion about how to cozy up to this and love, embrace and love rather than shy away and you just
Mm.
continue the fear reactivity around this stuff. And uh, there's there's a great Tibetan practice, and we actually had one of the great um, practitioners of it, Chode practice, uh, Lama Tsultrim Alioni. Are you familiar with her?
Not familiar, but I
Oh,
think maybe I've
okay.
heard you guys
Yeah,
the
check
name.
her out because it'd be good. I think also it's something you could pick up for your work. I mean, we're on a podcast now. I'm giving you this kind of referral, but what she does in this practice, it's an ancient practice and it's very effective. She came out to Maui and did it last year, about a year ago, and it's actually she wrote a book too about it, feeding the demons, feeding your
I've heard of that
demons.
book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so there's an actual practice and going through step by step by step to invite those aspects of your mind, the negative emotions and thoughts, invite them in one by one, and surround them and give them what they need. And Ram Dass actually he used to do this. He probably didn't even know it existed when he came back from India first. He'd say, "Yeah, no, you have negative thoughts. Just invite them in for a cup of tea. Here,
Hmm.
have your tea, and then you can leave. That kind of. So that is the feeling, and this is an extraordinarily important thing for everybody to learn how to relate with negative emotions and thoughts and so on, because shying away, fearing, or trying to hit them over the head with a sledgehammer is
Yeah.
not something that works very well.
Yeah. There's that old idea of, how would you speak to a friend? And it's almost never the same way people often speak to themselves.
Yeah.
And that's the basic tenet of cognitive behavioral therapy too, is just kind of seeing those thoughts and replacing those with something more based in reality and kinder. And
Yeah.
I know for like basic meditation, when you first start, I've worked with some young folks that they're being, how do we teach them meditation in an approachable way? They always think that they're doing it poorly because these thoughts keep coming back and so
Yeah,
forth.
right.
Right.
Yeah, no, you're the
And
only
I'm
one
like,
who does that, so you're
yeah, I'm
really
like,
a
me too.
failure.
It's like that is it. It's
Yeah.
like and so, yeah, man, compassion is such a big thing
Yeah.
for yourself. I
Yeah.
mean, what a lesson to just learn over and over again. And what a
Yeah.
powerful weapon for all that judgment.
Yeah. Absolutely. Um, you just mentioned the song "Grandmother's Sphere," which is
Yeah.
from your Love Bomb album. Let's listen to that since it seems apropos. Okay, here you go,
Sounds
everybody.
good.
"Grandmother's Sphere" from East Forest. Wonderful, wonderful song, Trevor. Really wonderful. Um, Tell me, we haven't talked about. Now I know you do go out and perform. Never, you teach as
Sure.
well, and you're
Mhm.
you're out. Are you going to be out there in the near future? By the way, which would be spring
Yeah,
of 2018 here.
yeah. Next upcoming is I'm performing at the Tree Fort Fest, and they also have little forts inside that, like little. So there's yoga fort inside, and Tree Fort's like the music festival, and there's film
Mm,
fort. So that's March 21st through 25th, and that's in Boise, Idaho. One of my favorite festivals,
mm.
actually.
Well,
Um,
uh, however, everybody you'll be able to see. We'll link in with Trevor's East Forest schedule
it's just
on.
eastforest.org.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very
Okay.
easy to find.
Yeah, so you'll be able to to see all the dates, even if you listen to this past that particular date, there'll be other ones. So now someone who I've been very close to, I know that you have a friendship with him as well, Trevor Hall, Rampriya Das.
Yeah.
And I don't even know. Do you know that whole story with my little brother who helps you out as well? How Trevor met
No.
Neem Karoli Baba?
Oh, no. I just, I mean, I met Trevor this fall for the first time when we toured together. We did a 30 city tour where I opened for him. It was just amazing. And so obviously doing that was really a great way to get to know each other. We feel like brothers now. We have some strange like similarities. We both broke our left arms and have the same 3 scars on our arms from surgery.
That's
It's
funny.
like, yeah. And of course we're both named Trevor, but
yeah, right.
which I can say I was getting pretty annoyed after 2 months of constantly hearing Trevor, which is not a name I normally hear. And you always have to turn your head.
Yeah.
And then 99% of the time they weren't talking to me. But
Just call him Rampriya. That's what
no one did.
No one else will,
I
because
know.
he's out there under his brand, Trevor Hall. But
I don't know that story. Tell it to me.
Well, briefly, he went to school with my brother Sam up in Idlewild, and they became friends. And my brother had a picture of Neem Karoli Baba up in his room, but Trevor Rampriya Trevor knew that my brother had an older father, right? His second marriage or third, whatever it was. And so he thought, oh, that's his father. But he was so attracted to the picture, he finally one day had to say, is this your father? And Trevor and my brother Sam went, no, that's not my father. That's my family guru from India. And Neem Karoli Baba. Well, Trevor, boom, that was it.
Yeah,
that moment,
like
gone, right? And then they started writing songs together, and a lot of his earlier materials had a lot about his experience with Neem Karoli Baba. And I met him around that time, so I've known him since he's like 17 or whatever it is. And
no kidding.
Yeah, because of my brother. And we've remained friends all these days. But I just find that him and you, and I know, isn't there somebody else, Nacho?
Nako. Yeah.
Not Nachos.
Yeah. Nacho? That's his hip hop name, maybe.
Yeah,
Nacho.
Right.
Yeah.
Don't tell him, or Nako. Yeah, I don't know him, and nor do I really know his music, but I do know he's in the same fabric of soul, spirit person, and that all gets reflected through his music. So there seems to be quite a number of people that are coming up at this point that to me are very important. What do you think that's all about with you guys?
There's definitely, part of it is that I think it was fostered in the festival culture that came up in the last decade or so, that the quote unquote consciousness festivals, kind of a West Coast thing. So that definitely brought forth a style of music, but a lot of it was more electronic driven. And Trevor and Nako and even myself, I do have a lot of electronic influences, but I play piano and I'm mostly using acoustic instruments. So, I think it's just this heart-centered music. And for myself, and I look around at the folks doing it, I think it's a symptom of the times. Like it's a reaction to the energy of our culture, the dominant North American culture. And the stronger that gets and the crazier that gets and the more the speed of everything increases, it's like you have this opposite and equal reaction on the other side. I mean, the music, you see it in the art, but you see it in the popularity of organic food or the yoga scene blowing up around the country internationally. And I think it's connected.
What's really connected is to the end of the 60s, early 70s, when there's such similar stuff going on, such oppression on level of wars and level. I mean, we had Nixon, now we have Trump, kind of a deal. And so that created a something. And certainly, aside from, there were many different social movements, but certainly on the spiritual, there was a huge spiritual movement at that time. And I think that there's a real parallel to now.
I think it's still reverberating in a lot of ways. This is just another wave of it. And hey, I mean, that was tough with the Controlled Substances Act. I think that was 1970,
Mm-hmm.
where they just sort of gobbled up everything and threw it into a backwards controlled substances system. But that's starting to shift.
Mm-hmm.
You see it with cannabis becoming legal here and there, and I'm hoping that psilocybin is next. I mean, I know there's a push to get it on the ballot in California, so I just see it's a matter of time.
Yeah, well, and they are doing all these experiments. Rick Doblin, particularly, have done some
Yeah,
stuff
John
with it.
Hopkins,
Yeah,
NYU,
yeah, exactly. Where
UCLA, I think.
they're seeing how effective this is in so many different ways, from PTSD to very ill people to addiction and so on. So
To who knows what else, right? Yeah.
and
I
who
mean,
knows what
so
else? Yeah,
it deserves research and it deserves some attention because it's a tool we've been given. I look forward to that. And I think I know from anecdotal experience how powerful things like music can be when done intentionally and done right in these settings that are very well, I don't say controlled, but they're very intentional.
yeah.
It can really, really be a powerful, beautiful piece of spiritual medicine. Um, and I feel like we've barely scratched the surface with that stuff.
Yeah. How do you personally navigate, going out, and you have many aspects, and I know I've talked to Trevor Hall,
Yeah.
Rampria, about this, in terms of you've got a career, you've got to earn the daily bread,
Mm-hmm.
you've got demands from the commercial part of the whole enterprise, from PR
Yeah.
people to distribution to all of that.
Yeah.
How do you manage to keep yourself in the right spot when you're out there in public doing what you're doing?
I think having, for me, a morning ritual really helps.
Mm.
And having certain things that and that's sort of a whole systems approach for me. So it involves, it's a big part of its diet and nutrition and supplements, like just knowing what my brain needs. I happen to take things like 5-HTP in the winter and just kind of really paying attention to like the machine that I'm in. We were talking about before taking care of those animal needs.
Mm.
So diet, exercise, sleep, those are all huge. It's like I feel like I'm just swimming upstream if I don't get those things covered. And then beyond that, I have to balance my life with nourishment from things like having time off to go hiking and backpacking in nature, to have inspiration. It's really important that it's not unlike I stopped using social media recently.
Really?
I'm still like, East Forest is on social media, but I'm blessed enough to like have management help me with that. I send them stuff
Yeah, yeah.
and and they help put it up, but it was really pulling me down. And a good friend of mine, Court Johnson, who's the guy on the Voice of 10 Laws, he calls it information sickness. And I can feel that. I think we all feel that. We're inundated with too much, and especially with the smartphone. I mean, it's incredible how that's changed the world so quickly. And all of us, right? From kids to adults, it's unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
It's like we're in a weird movie. And when you're in New York City on the subway, it's everyone
Yeah.
is like, has their hand up to their face with earbuds on, and you
Yeah.
start to feel like a ghost. So,
It's really,
so,
it really
so I,
is.
I pay attention to that in my own life, and I'm someone who likes to build bridges between sort of the old and the new, the digital and the analog. And I like using technology in my work, but I like kind of balancing it out with the old ways too. And so I just try to stay mindful of how much time that stuff is. And as you get older, you start to learn what works for yourself. How do you nourish yourself and what do you need? But certainly, like when Trev and I were on the road, he was smart because it was his tour. He gave us 2.5 weeks off in the middle. So we did 3 weeks and then we had time off and then we went back on the road. And he knew he needed that time to recharge. And he was right. I needed it too. We did a retreat in the middle there, an East Forest retreat, but it was nourishing, right? Because you're connecting with community and you're not driving around and you're unplugged.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Digital detox is definitely,
It's the new rage. Yeah.
we all need to do it. I'm going to India shortly, and I go there fairly often. Actually, I was just there about 5 months ago, but I'm going there to work on a documentary, and amongst other things. And used to be, God, go to India, you are cut off. Now,
Right.
forget about it. They've
Right.
got cell towers everywhere.
Everywhere.
Everywhere, yeah. So digital detox, you got to go further up into the Himalayas to get
Yeah,
that
you
going.
got to go further and further and further away.
Exactly, to the ends of the world. But I don't know where I got this quote. It is from you, I am pretty sure. The quote is, "Work from inside out to unlock our future." To me, that's a great quote, Trevor. I love that quote. And it is you, right?
I think that's from that TED Talk thing I did. Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
right. You did a wonderful TED Talk, too. I forgot about that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that gets back to the core of the mission of East Forest is giving people tools and experiences to hopefully empower them to make the changes that they want to make. And you hope that makes this world a better place. And that's essentially, I really see the change that we want to see coming from the inside out. I don't think it's a top down solution. I don't believe that we're going to be saved from above in a sense. And I do think this is an interesting point you bring up, though, because this is a fine line these days between the trap of narcissism of the self-help movement, and while you're still recognizing that you need to do that work on yourself and it's paramount and it might be the most important thing first, but you also need to stay connected to the suffering that is happening in this world and action, right? And the choices you make really they matter. And it's tough because I think the deeper you get into the inner states or even psychedelic states, you're sort of shown this message that none of it matters, but it all really matters, which is a paradox. Like we have destiny, but at the same time, we're making choices. It's like a Buddhist koan or something. And you're like, what does that mean? And like, well, exactly, I don't know. But my heart tells me it's true.
Yeah.
That our choices really matter. And like even the little neuron firing my brain with each thought creates some kind of ripple, like literally, like that electrical firing. It's like a pebble into this cosmic ocean, and there's just infinite trillion numbers of these going in all directions and coming back in all directions. But it seems like it's a difficult thing to grapple with. But there is that truth that I really think it starts from the inside.
Yeah.
And that's why I've always wanted to, like, whether it's music or it's a talk or a retreat or maybe a book, it's just different doorways for people to walk into, and we're all kind of need continual inspiration.
I was told this is a key point, that paradox. It's all, Maharaj used to say, it's all perfect, but he was coming from the non-dual place that we could never understand that. And so at the same time, and he once told Ram Dass, because Ram Dass asked about karma and grace are one, which is the same concept, right?
Karma and grace are one.
Karma, the action, taking actions, and grace meaning it all is. It's completely written. It all is. And so Maharaji said, no, I can't talk about that in public. When he said, is it true they're one? No, can't talk about that. And then later he sent a message to Ram Dass. Ram Dass and I understand each other quite well. And he took it to mean that they are. But he didn't. Anyhow, I went not that long ago, maybe 8 years ago, to our Indian mother, Siddhima, who just left us, actually. And I told her that whole story, and she came back and said to me and said, "It is true, but no human mind could ever understand. There is no understanding anything like that. That is being it.
Yes.
And so you need to take action. You need to act as if they are not the same, because there's no
Yes.
way that it's an intellectual. In other words, she's saying that's bullshit. Just do what you got to do. Love, serve, remember, which is the only teaching we
Yeah.
ever got from Neem Karoli Baba, is
Yeah.
that, and you got to do that, and that means taking action. But at the same time, absolutely, working inside out means working on yourself and straightening your heart out. Because if you can't do that, no matter what action you take, it's going to be bullshit, because it's going to be have self-interest in it, and judgment and anger and all of that. So yeah, it's something to work on as you do take the actions that you do take, that hopefully will be positive in this world.
It's like the operating system that is to what it means to be human. It just, we can't compute outside that binary system in a sense, or it just, the machine doesn't work any other way. And that seems to be why we're here. Like those are the boundary conditions of what it means to be incarnate.
Yeah.
But outside that, that's that heart space, that's that soul space, that's the mystery. But it's called the mystery for a reason, because
Yeah.
that is what it will always be, as
Yeah.
long as we are in this box of the human flesh. Like dogs, right? They have their consciousness. They can't comprehend what our experience is. There must be other octaves above us that we just can't embody with our mind.
Yeah.
You can only embody it through the mystic poetry or the art or a feeling, or
Chanting the name is how I generally try and get straight with myself
sound.
on the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, speaking my language.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, great to have you. Great to
Yeah, it's
meet
really
you,
good to
Trevor.
meet you. I
Yeah,
mean, like I said, I'm a big fan of the network, and
thank you.
I appreciate everything you guys are doing. And I've been listening to Ram Dass for many years, reading his words. And, my Neem Karoli Baba story is that you guys put out, I think it was through your network, that book, Love Everyone.
Yep.
Wonderful book. And I picked it up and I started reading it. And I started noticing that just by having those stories swimming around my head, he started coming into my life. I had no connection
Really?
to him. Yes. And then I think maybe in that book, there was a story about someone mentioning about having a picture of him and the power of that. So I was like, went online, picture, hit print,
Yeah.
put it on my little altar.
Yeah.
And it's like, and then it was like seriously alchemical. Like his eyes, wow. And it just became like this really deep connection. And like ever since then, he's been dancing into my life in these playful and really powerful ways. It's beautiful, man. And that came from that book.
Wow.
Uh,
My first wife, who I was in India with, Maharaji married her. She wrote that book, Parvati Markus. So she edited it and put all the story. She collected the stories.
Yeah.
So yeah,
That's so cool.
yeah, that's our story of going to India and meeting him, and it's everybody's story, because we went with the same
So many
exact
stories.
stuff. Yeah, one way or the other, that he just absolutely shattered everybody's mind, and we needed that sledgehammer. Most people don't need it, and he does the same thing, and he has continued to do that for all these years since he left that body. Just
Yeah.
your story, I can't tell you how many times I've heard that
Yeah.
story, one way or the other.
Ram Dass call it miracles. Those miracle stories he would sometimes tell, and they're almost like cheating, but
Yeah,
sometimes we really need them to kind of,
yeah,
especially in the Western world, to really convince us in a
yeah.
sense.
Well,
Like,
think of us who actually were there, sitting in front of this being. We were really fucked up. We had to go all the way there and get that right. Whereas people, bang, just pick up, read a thing, have a dream, anything, a picture.
but come on, you guys being there in person, there's probably nothing that could replace that. I can't imagine.
Well, I
But
won't lie about that.
yeah,
But at the same time,
I'd be lying if I didn't say I was jealous. I mean, that's quite an experience to have.
something we talk about with Duncan Trussell all the time. It's a
I bet, man.
Yeah, really.
He's great, man.
Well, thanks again, Trevor. I really appreciate it. I want to go out with a song because I don't get a chance to do many podcasts around music. So and since, as I said, that was a big thing has been in my life since the very beginning. And then, of course, I had this label in Los Angeles in the 90s and early 2000s. So, and there's one guy we haven't talked about, MC Yogi, who's your friend as well. And you guys did a fabulous record that I really love. And what is the name of that record?
Ritual Mystical. It was in 2016. It was a collaborative record, a release for MC Yogi, and it's pretty fun. It's funny because like it really to me sounds like truly a bit of East Forest and a bit of MC Yogi. It's sort of like spacious hip hop with some ambient ethereal elements, and then MC Yogi's got some. It's cool.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's really
people
cool.
seem to like it back when we put it out. So
yeah, no, it's really cool. And I'm gonna play. So there's one. As soon as I got to Neem Karoli Baba, one thing he used to do all the time, he'd go like this. He wouldn't say. He'd just put his hand, and he'd say, "Sabek," which in Hindi, all one. There's only one. Every day, Sabek, all one. So guess what track I'm picking from this album?
Probably the one called One Only Now Exists.
Yeah, exactly. That fits with everything we're talking about. So we're going to go out with this. Thanks again, Trevor, for being here on Mindrolling and BeHereNowNetwork.com. And you can go there and we'll give you all the links to everything that East Forest is involved with and that Trevor does. And, let's continue this dialogue,
yeah, man,
okay?
It's so great. Love you guys, and thank you so much for having me.
All right, here you go. This is One, which is Trevor with MC Yogi, and we'll see you all next week on Mindrolling.
All I really need. All I really need. All I really need.